Hello, my name is Linda Arhin, PhD candidate at the University Putra, Malaysia. And thank you to the conference organizers for giving me the opportunity to come and present part of my PhD project on the topic, phenotypic variability analysis of dwarf coconut varieties for yield and yield component traits. Okay, so just in case you're thinking of coming to Malaysia for your next summer holidays, I think you could look up some interesting places like the Batu Caves, the Batu Caves, the Langkawi, Genting Highlands, the Sunway Pyramid Lagoon, and also I must say that the Petronas Twin Towers is synonymous with Malaysia. Now back to coconut. The coconut is a perennial tropical crop, mostly found on the coastlines and areas with good rainfall distribution in tropical countries. And they are known for their hard outer shell and fibrous husk. They have both food and non-food uses, but they are normally cultivated for their water, milk, copra, and oil. Two main types of coconut, the dwarf and the tall. The dwarf grows to a maximum height of about 10 meters, and whilst the tall can grow up to about 30 meters in height. The dwarf are mainly self-pollinating, so they have a lot of uniformity in fruit characteristics within population, whilst the tall types are outcrossing, so they have a lot of heterogeneity within population. Some bit of information about the global coconut industry. 90 countries cultivate coconuts in the world, and the production covers around 12 million hectares of land, and majority of this is in the Asia Pacific. In 2022-2023, production was around 67 billion nuts, which translated to about 7.73 billion US dollars to global coconut smallholders. In Malaysia, coconut is the number 4 in terms of head rate after the oil palm, rubber, and paddy. And the major exporting coconut products are the coconut oil, activated carbon, desiccated coconut. They also import a lot of fresh coconut and coconut oil from neighboring countries like Indonesia and the Philippines. In the world, Malaysia ranks 5th in terms of productivity with about 7,106 nuts per hectare. 4 main varieties are recommended by the Department of Agriculture in Malaysia. The first one being the Matak, which is a hybrid, a cross between the dwarf coconut and the tall coconut, and the other 3 are all dwarf varieties. There are many challenges associated with the coconut industry in Malaysia, but the major ones are that there's inadequate high-yielding quality planting materials to supply to farmers, and there's also low domestic supply of coconuts in the country, and they also have a lot of unproductive old coconut plantations. In view of this, the government has come out with policies to help curb some of these challenges that the coconut industry faces. And one of them is the National Agri-Food Policy, in which the government has made it a priority to revive the coconut industry. There's also the RMK 11th and 12th Malaysian Plan, in which the government says that it's going to add coconut as a source of wealth creation in the country. To walk the talk by the government has provided funding under the Malaysian higher education under the long-term research grant for new hybrids with good yields or high yields to be developed to the existing mattered hybrid. And we know that to kickstart our hybrid development, we need to determine if there is sufficient genetic variation in the existing germplasm that we have. So we set the objective, 4 main objectives to achieve this target. And the first one, we want to explore genetic variability among the 90 palms. That is the 3 recommended dwarf varieties by the Department of Agriculture. And the yellow dwarf, red dwarf, pandan, so 30 of each variety based on their phenotypic performances. And we also want to know that if the variability that we see in the population is mostly caused by genetic factors or mainly due to environmental factors. And the ultimate aim is to identify some high-yielding palms that we can use to develop potential coconut hybrids. To start the study, we sampled some coconut palms in 2 places in the northern states called Perak, one of the northern states in Malaysia called Perak. And we sampled palms that were 10 years and over, because mostly with coconuts, when they are 10 years and over, that is when we have stable yield. So we sampled 30 palms of each variety, and we took data on the fruit yield, the palm height, the girth, and all other parameters. To give you an idea of what we did with our data collection in the field, this is mainly what we started with. We started with the average nut yield per palm per year. So we go to the field, we look at the 3 most matured branches on a palm. We count the number of fruits in that, and we calculate the averages. In our next count, we do same thing, and at the end of the day, we estimate the average number of fruits per bunch to get how much that particular palm, the yield of that particular palm that we've selected. And for the palm height, we measured the stems in a straight line from the ground to the base directly under the crown of the palm. And we did this using, for palms that were 3 meters and below, we used a 3-in-1 laser distance measuring device. But for palms that were 3 meters and above to about 5 meters or 6 meters, we used the UAV to help us in doing this. For other features or traits that we took, they were mainly on the flowers and on the stem, and these were done by hand using simple tape measure. So after analysis, we for the ANOVA table, we realized that there were significant differences in the genotypes for all the traits that we measured. And this indicates that there's sufficient genetic variability in the genotypes that we were studying or in the palms that we were studying for our hybrid development. Also, for the studies on the genetic parameters, we realized that between the genotypic coefficients of variation and the phenotypic coefficients of variation, there were marginal differences. This also implies that the expression of the traits that we were measuring were less influenced by the environment. So that means that we could choose those traits based on their phenotypic characters. For the heritability, we had high heritability values, also indicating less influence of environment on the expression of the trait, and that also the traits could be passed on to their next progenies. From cluster analysis, we had 5 main distinct groups for the 90 palms that we studied, except for cluster 2, which some of the varieties grouped together, or the other clusters grouped into their distinct varietal groups. And also for the PCA, we realized that principal component 1 and principal component 2 gave a variability value of about 63%, And the traits that were giving most of the variability were the number of fruits per palm, the palm height, the girth at 20 centimeters, and girth at 150 centimeters. We did the correlations and we realized that the palm height, the girth at 20 centimeters, the girth at 150 centimeters, and the number of rachillae were strongly correlated to yield. So meaning that we could look at those traits and select for yield. So in conclusion, I'll say that yes, there was some variability in the population, the three populations that the DOA recommended varieties, and most of the variability were due to genetic influences than the environmental influences. And the correlation and PC analysis also indicated that we could select high-yielding palms based on some traits like the palm height, the rachillae, and the girth at 20 centimeters and 150 centimeters. So all in all, we were able to select about 12 palms, 4 of each variety, to proceed a hybrid development project. Thank you to the organizers of this conference once again for the travel grants to be able to share my work with you. I also like to thank the Ministry of Higher Education Malaysia under the long-term research grants for funding the research, and to my wonderful supervisory committee. The last not the least, I'll say thank you to Mr. Afolabi of A&M Texas University for the final touch that he made to my presentation slides. As Malaysians will say, terima kasih. Thank you for listening.
Linda, thank you for speaking. So we have enough time for a few questions. So I would like to open the discussion. Maybe I'll start with one question from my side. So since palm trees have to become quite old before they can be harvested and yields can be collected, and you said that height was a very important determinant of the overall yield. So could you already now project some recommendations for management based on the results you obtained during your PhD? So for example, what palm producers or coconut producers could do better to increase their yield based on your results?
Yeah, so basically when you go to the field based on my results, you could determine from maybe the palm height, how tall the palm is, or how big the bowl or the trunk is, to know that if this coconut is going to yield higher or not.
Can producers and farmers do something to increase the height? Is there a go-to way, for example, the removal of understory while the palm tree is still young or something like this? I have honestly no clue about palm trees.
Yeah, so I think most of these traits are more genetic than environmental. The height and the width of the stem, because even with coconut, it lacks the cambium, so when it expands to some size, it cannot expand again. So most of these traits are more genetic than environmental influences. So I don't think farmers can do much to increase the height or the width of the palm.
Except selecting the right trees.
Except selecting the right. Yeah.
So pre-breeding, or even this is a job for gene banks to pre-breed the best.
Yeah, the best palms before giving to farmers. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, that is definitely a take-home message here for the gene bank managers. Any other questions?
How long does it take for a coconut tree to produce coconuts from germination to the first coconut they see?
If I'm getting your question right, after harvesting the coconut fruit, how long does it take to sprout and develop into a stem? Is that what you're asking?
From the sprout to a full tree and having another coconut.
Okay, so let me start from the pollination. When coconut flowers are pollinated, it takes approximately 11 to 12 months for you to have the full fruits, for it to dry up, harvest the seed, go and put it in the nursery, and you have to wait for another year for it to sprout to some particular level before you transplant to the field. And for dwarf varieties, it takes about 3 to 4 years before you can have the full coconut and have some fruit. But for the tall variety, you have to wait for about 7 to 9 years.
Long process. Thank you.
So it's more comparable to forestry here than to crop, than to a field crop. Any further questions? No? Then I want to thank Linda one more time and